it's Thursday, so this can only be Coffee Kickstarter. And you'll note there's only 3 of us here today. And the reason for that is today we're shining the light on one of the property angels. And that lucky lady is Sam Beddoe. But first, we'd like to introduce ourselves. So Sarah, if you'd like to say a few words.
Yeah, hi guys, thanks for joining us this morning. My name's Sarah Smith. For those that don't know me, bought my first property in 2004. I've been mainly doing single lets since then, but then in 2012 I started focusing on HMOs, which I did exclusively until about a year ago really. So I've built up my portfolio with single lets and HMOs, and my background is as a solicitor, and like these ladies, I left the corporate world about 5 years ago to pursue property full-time. I've done a range of property strategies, including title splits, purchasing at auction, as I said, single lets, HMOs, done a little bit of rent to rent, and also started a letting agency from scratch, which I did for 4 years and sold that in April. And I also host Partners in Property with these 2 lovely ladies.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. And briefly about myself before we start delving into Sam's history and what she's done and the fantastic things she's achieved. So I originally started out as an accountant. Somebody has to, right? I then went on to work in project and program management and strategic business consultancy in big blue chip industry. I've done a little bit of mentoring, a little bit of public speaking, and now I do things on my terms because I took those skills I'd learned in big blue chip and used them to start building several businesses from solid foundations from the ground up. So anyway, let's get on to today's main act, Sam Beddoe. Good morning, Sam.
Hello.
So Sam, tell us a bit about yourself and why you exited the police force.
Okay, thank you. It feels a bit funny being the person being interviewed this week. Okay, so I had a career in the police force for 23 years, half my life, and that was from starting out, you know, Bobby on the beat, and at the end when I exited, I was a detective dealing with serious and organised crime and major crime. So one of my expertises was interviewing suspects in those sort of serious offences, things like drug trafficking, murder, blackmail, kidnapping, human trafficking, all of those sort of things. And it's a job that I really, really loved doing the interviewing, but found that it was becoming less and less of a job that I could do, which would work with my family life. I was at that point a single mum, 2 young kids, and when you need to sort of be available for sort of 72 hours virtually round the clock to interview suspects at the drop of a hat, that doesn't particularly work well with family life. So knew that something needed to change. The job I was doing was becoming more and more risky, risk to my life. So that obviously didn't fit with being a parent either. So that's why I looked at different options, and property is something that I'd always wanted to be involved with before joining the police force. I'd worked in a number of different house estate agents, worked for a house builder. At that point, I was wanting to go on their training program to be a site manager. But it was in the sort of late 1980s, and that's a long time ago, showing my age. But it was when one of the first recessions was coming in. I mean, we all talk about 2008, but there was recessions in the late 80s as well, when the interest rates were sort of mega high at 15%. So I always had that interest, and especially when I was in the estate agents, I could see that people were buying these sort of 2 up, 2 down terrace houses in Portsmouth, and at that time you could buy one of those for about 19,000. I know it seems a bit crazy,
Wow.
isn't it? Yeah, but it was a long time ago. You know, we're talking 30 years ago, and then people would, in effect, do them as a flip, so refurbish them and then put them back on the market with us in a very short time period, say 6 months, for 26,000. So if you work out the percentages there, it's similar to what we would have there. You know, it's an increase of, what is that, 25%? That's what we look for now. I mean, that's more than we would expect to get these days, isn't it? And do that. So I had that taste then, but I wasn't in the right place. I was young, you know, I was probably 18, 19, and didn't really feel that was possible for me. So it was a seed at the back of my mind to do that. And it was not until later, when the policing career was not working out for me with the work-life balance, that I wanted to look at the other options. And I knew that somebody I knew was doing really well in property, and spoke with her, found out a bit more about her, and kind of worked with her to start my journey. And part of that was getting some education. And I also learned what a SAS is, never heard of a SAS before then. And obviously I had a pension with the police force, but being single, if I was to die, there was no partner to be passing on my pension to. So it would pass to my kids, but only at 25% of the value, and only until they're 23.
Let's tease out a couple of points, because you've made some great points there. So the first one, you were transitioning into property. Was it big bang, or did you kind of do it over a period of time?
So I spent probably 9 to 12 months doing parallel, so working in the job and learning more about property and starting to get involved. So yes, there was a period though where I decided I did want to leave and just get on with property, and that's not for everyone. Some people need to balance it up so that their property income is matching their job income before they'll take that leap. Everyone's different, but because of the way my job was going and the risk and the demands and the stress of it all, it was something that I needed to come away from sooner than that. So it was a bit of a leap of faith, perhaps, but
no, that's great. And the link elegantly from that now into your SAS. So tell us what a SAS is, first of all. We may know, but some listening in might not. So tell us how you were able to transfer your police pension as one of the last blue light pensions to help you on your journey as well.
Yeah, so you can't do what I did now, unfortunately, if you're part of the public sector, which I think is a bit unfair and discriminative towards people in the public sector, but that's the way it is, and that changed probably April 2015. So it's a self-administered scheme. So a normal company pension, you make a contribution into it, your company can make a contribution into it, and when you get to retirement age, whatever that is these days, you can either get a lump sum sometimes. I mean, that's what it was for the police. You get a lump sum and then you get a monthly income. So the monthly income or the annual income was going to be £12,000 a year, which I thought, for all the sort of blood, sweat and tears, was not enough for me to, and I felt I could do something better with it. The main drive for me was that the conditions of the police pension were that if you were to die, then 50% would go to your spouse. I didn't have a spouse, so that didn't work. So if not, then it would go 25% to my kids up until they were 23, and then it would stop and all the money would go back in the pot. And I felt that wasn't something that I wanted to happen. I hadn't worked all those years for it to go back in the pot when they were 23. So that's why I looked at the options of the SAS, which is where I managed that myself with a professional trustee, pension trustee, and I can do, obviously is in limitations, but I can make that pension money work better then I felt it was going to be working in the police. And what it means is that that value of that pension pot is entirely in my estate, which means that it will benefit 100% to my children, not 25%. So that was the main contributing factor, really, was the legacy part of that, and that I could do better with it than I felt I would achieve in the police pension.
No, that's really great. So Sam, tell us about the first property you purchased once you'd kind of like moved into this new world, this new kind of area that you were transitioning across into.
Well, I was in the process of sorting out my SAS. I took some equity out of my property so that I freed up some seed money to buy property. And then with a business partner, Jenny, I bought a couple of single buy-to-lets. So one was a studio and one was a 3-bedroom house. But they weren't anything to set the world alight. They were already up and running and tidy. We weren't adding any value to them. We were just putting tenants in. So in hindsight, maybe, you know, it was fine to get started with that, but maybe they weren't the best buys because we weren't adding any value. We were just buying something to get some cash flow on. So we weren't creating equity. After that, I bought a office that already had prior approval to be turned into 4 apartments, and I still hold that property. So that was a very steep learning curve doing that, but it was good to be hands-on with that. When I say hands-on, I wasn't actually, you know, doing the building work.
So let's roll back and walk through that, because I was going to lead into that one, and it's actually a lot more than what you've just disclosed there. You learned some fabulous skills and you achieved a lot with that. So let's slowly talk through what you did with that. You bought it with one planning use class agreed, moving from office to residential, right? And you converted that building into serviced accommodation, but it didn't just happen like that. There was a journey you had to go through. You actually built a business from commercial conversion, adding value and creating solid foundations. And it's something that pays you dividends each month right now. So let's talk through that journey kind of slowly, how you took that former office with parking in a great location by an airport, and how you created value by transforming it into flats available for Airbnb lettings, contractors, etc., etc.
Yeah, so initially when I was buying it, I was hoping that it was going to be a great location. I wasn't. It wasn't as if the opportunity came up. It wasn't as if I was seeking the opportunity in that particular area, but it came up, and looking at the deal, it seemed like it was going to be a good opportunity. So went forward with it. Now I had some money from releasing the equity and the pension money coming through, but I did work with investors on that one. So there was a number of different elements that I used within that project, which were using pension money, working with other investors, the commercial conversion, more change of use, and creating a business at the end of it. So yeah, I needed to work with investors, so built those relationships with them. They had a first charge on the property, and throughout the build was keeping in contact with them, sharing it with them, site visit, that sort of thing. I think it's really important to keep people in the loop so that they know that things are going right with their money and they're going to get it back at the end, and they feel part of the deal. They might just be people who are perhaps sort of dipping their toe into property, don't necessarily want to do what I did, but just to be involved in it on the periphery, if you like. So yeah, working with the investors. I had a main contractor there. I had my architect who was monitoring what was going on and making sure that the value of the invoicing from the builder was accurate. used all sorts of different professional team, and they were all new to me. So this was the first time I'd done that sort of project. So everyone was new to me. So it was a learning curve, building those relationships with those people and relying on their expertise and accepting that you don't need to know everything. You need to be working with the right people who have got years of experience in their particular arena. So that was valuable to accept that and not do everything yourself. Okay, people can save money by doing lots of things themselves, but you have the potential risk there, and you have the delays, and also everything's on you there, so you haven't got their professional indemnity insurance to be relying upon as well. So during the build, it was always going to be going into serviced accommodation, so I needed to do the change of use application during that period because it needed to be compliant with the SAS pension, which is for commercial buildings. So it didn't want it going into dwelling use. It needed to stay as serviced accommodation C1 use. So I had to do that through the procedure. And then when I got to the end of the build, my plan was to get some bank finance to then be able to pay the investors back, because they'd been in the deal for roughly 9 to 12 months. So I needed to pay them back because obviously they're on a different interest rate than a bank would be. The problem I found that 4 years ago, there was less products available for people who were operating serviced accommodation. So the bank said to me that they needed to see 12 months of trading to prove that this was a viable business to be putting into that building, as opposed to buy to let. That was all they were sort of recognising then. So what I needed
there, listening in, people, Sam has made a really valid point for you to listen to. Some of the big training companies tell you just do it. Sam learned that actually she needed substance of 12 months worth of trading, or a partner that had that, to move off the private funding onto commercial funding. That was a big lesson she learned, and she's sharing that with you as a coalface practitioner. So take on board that lesson if you're looking to transform a building from commercial to serviced accommodation. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the restrictions are now, but I would still think if you're brand new to serviced accommodation, so you don't have the experience and it's a building that hasn't been used for that purpose, then I think they'll still have those same conditions on it. Perhaps if you're an existing provider in that location with other property somewhere else, then they might be a bit more flexible. But yeah, always factor that you could have an extra year in there. And because I'd formed those strong relationships with the investors, they were happy to keep their money in there for another year, which was great because they could have had plans for their money to do something else with it. Obviously, they're getting a great return again for another year, but it could have been that they had that money earmarked for something else. So that works, to continue that relationship, maintain that with them so that they're on board, they're happy with it. And in the 12 months after that, the bank were happy to then refinance, and I was able to pay back all of the investors. And I still run that as serviced accommodation now, and it does very well. Get a mix of leisure and business guests. Lots of regular people stay. At the moment, I'm fully booked with a variety of different clients, but they're all regular, so they've been staying with me for Monday to Friday for weeks. So that's good. And like you say, it's in a good location, and I think that's important with serviced accommodation. Is good amenities and good transport routes is essential.
No, that's brilliant. And Sam has shared with you lots of lessons there that hopefully you picked up on. And also, you'll note Sam talked about great investor relations. Well, the thing is, her former background as a police detective really gave her the tools to understand these investors' requirements and keep listening until she was clear on what they wanted and how they wanted to be communicated with. So some fabulous shares there. Now I'm going to just move slightly to the right now, because while this was going on, you also started a business with Sarah Smith, a rent-to-rent business. So do you want to tell us a bit about that now?
Yeah, I mean, I've probably glutton for punishment, taking on so many things, but was determined to exit out of the job to be full-time in property. Yeah, I mean, it was great experience to do that with Sarah, because obviously Sarah's got many more years in property. What is it, 16, Sarah? Something like that, isn't it?
Since 2014, so sorry, since
2004, wasn't it?
2004, so
yeah, 16 years.
16 years.
Yeah, so it was a great opportunity to be able to work with Sarah with, you know, that vast experience that she's got in HMOs. So we decided to form a rent-to-rent business, and we acquired a number of HMOs in Southampton and Southsea. And it was a great learning experience for me working with Sarah, and all the sort of legislation and working parts of running HMOs, which is not passive at all. But it was great, and that experience of rent to rent, I don't know how people find it these days, but again, it was down to relationships. So building those relationships with the estate agents. And I know lots of people, you see it on Facebook, don't you? All the comments about this. What do you say to an agent? And a bit fearful about talking to people. At the end of the day, agents are people just like us. And it's just about building those relationships. And again, those listening skills, listening to what does the vendor need. They might not have, what's their pain points, what's their problems that we could solve. And that's where we did well in identifying that, so that we could get more than one property per agent to make that work. So yeah, I can't remember how long we ran that for. Was it about 3 years, Sarah?
Yeah, from 2014, I think, for 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, so it did really well. It served our purposes, and the reason we stopped trading that company was that we were busy with other things. You know, you can't do everything, and that's, you know, I'm getting to that point at the moment to understand that you can't keep spinning too many plates, because otherwise they all get wobbly.
But you carried on spinning a few for a while, because you went down the auction purchase route, and you bought some flats for title splitting and adding value. So do you want to tell us about those?
Yeah, that was a great deal that Sarah and I were involved with, and we have another business partner that we did that business with too, and he's on the Isle of Wight. So we bought a property at auction on the Isle of Wight, and again that was 100% with investor funds, which was fantastic. So none of us, all three of us, didn't need to put any money into that. It was fully funded, and it didn't come without challenges. So we had 2 flats. I think they were both occupied. One of them had a compliant tenant, so they would talk to us and we could deal with them. The other one wouldn't even let us in. So we had to buy at auction without doing a viewing, and knowing that the tenant upstairs was tricky and would not open the door to anyone. So you kind of think, oh my gosh, what are we going to find when we get in there? We knew the gas had been cut off. I don't think he was paying the electric. So we knew there was a bit of trouble there, but the advantage of that is that puts other people off. So we were prepared for that. And Sarah and our other business partner, Sam, had 10+ years experience in dealing with tricky tenants. So we were fine with that. Sarah went to the auction and won the bid. I sorted out the finance, and then Sam on the Isle of Wight was doing the project managing. So we all had different roles. We've got the troublesome tenant out, managed him out. God knows what it'd be like now with the new tenancy rules and regulations. Don't think it would be as straightforward as it was with us. We didn't refurbish the bottom flat because there was tenants in situ, long-term tenants, so didn't need to be doing anything there. But the upstairs needed fully refurbishment. And by that, I don't mean we ripped everything out. So we refurbed the kitchen, we refurbed the bathroom, and we repainted everything. We sorted out the garden. And then title split. The title split took forever. And I think we had a bit of a poor service from the solicitor that we used there. And maybe the lesson there would have been to identify that a bit earlier, that she was underperforming, and get rid of her and get something new, because it did hinder the sales.
Just can I say, there's a bit of interference. There's a bit of a like clanging sound. I don't know.
Oh, right. Hang on a sec.
Who it might be.
I think you may have just found the culprit.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a window or blind or something.
No, it's my dog tapping her nails on the floor while she's waiting to jump on the sofa. Yeah. Yeah, so we sorted out the title deeds and sold both those properties and created a big chunk of equity there. So that was really, really good. And it didn't take us too long. I think the thing that slowed us down was the messing around with the title deeds. So we needed a bit more of a proactive solicitor there, but we got there in the end, and that's fine. So that worked really well too.
So it sounds like there were some lessons learned which you now incorporate in how you operate, but all in all, you came out of that really well because you bought smartly.
Yeah, I think from this experience that I've had, and that's only 5 years, 5-6 years of experience. I think in every deal there is a learning.
There always is.
My experience there is anyway. Yeah. As long as you learn from it and don't repeat it and move on from that with some better practices, then you can just keep going. And lots of people say, don't they, that if this was easy, then everyone would be doing it.
Totally. So this time, let's jump the other way to the right. So I know you've got a business that, whilst property related, is more on the utility front. So do you want to tell us a bit about that? And it actually might be really beneficial and interesting to people listening on how you can help them reduce their utility costs. So yeah, please share some more.
Yeah, so I've got a business I've got a commercial broker that I deal with, and residential with utility warehouse, and I was doing that before property. So I was looking for something before property anyway, and the customer offering is as a multi-service provider. So it sorts out all of your utility costs at a better value, better cost than any other providers, with better customer service. So, I mean, utilities are pretty dull, aren't they? But if it's one less hassle that you don't have to think about, because everything's on one direct debit, one customer service, everything's taken care of, then it's one less thing to worry about. And that's why customers like it, and that's why they stay. What I liked about the business is their good ethics and values, and it was another stream of income alongside property, and residual income, so a recurring income. So I do the work once and I get paid every month for it.
Now that sounds great. So as well as you being able to help reduce costs for property owners out there, potentially for the right people, they too could earn another income stream working as part of your team, right?
Yes, yeah, and I think that's really going to come to the fore as we go into the autumn and winter. We've got furlough ending imminently and not enough jobs to go round. So people that might be looking for a traditional job, it's not necessarily going to be there. So they're going to have to look at different options, or even if there's the job but there's not enough hours in a traditional job, they need to top it up with something else. I can see that that's going to be there. And what really came to the fore for me with it is at the beginning of lockdown with the serviced accommodation business, it just went off a cliff. Nobody could stay, not even the contractors could stay. So there was a number of apartments, 8 apartments empty for 5 weeks, which was terrifying because you still got the bills, just nobody staying there. And how vulnerable I was there to the effects of coronavirus. Looking at the accounts now for that period, it was fine, it was sustainable, I could manage that, but the shock of that initially was not great. But what really brought home for me was that my other business, with the utility business, was still paying me every month, even though I hadn't done any work. It was still paying me every single month for the work I'd done once. So that sort of brought home the security there, that if you put in the work, it keeps rewarding you forever, and it's a legacy business, so that will pass to the children too. So that's why I'm sort of streamlining what I'm doing going forward, so that I can give more time to do that and develop that. And like you say, I can see there's going to be more opportunities for team growth with people needing an extra income.
So for the right people, there's potentially an opportunity there. So
yeah,
I'm going to loop back round to the developments you've got on your plate right now. But first, as we're talking about coronavirus, what kind of unexpected opportunities would you say COVID-19 threw at you that in a normal business as usual kind of environment probably wouldn't have happened? Is that one of them, and have there been others?
I think that's the primary one for me, is recognizing that the value of that business that we've just talked about, and if I give more time to that, I will be able to develop that further. And I think the way that we've been talking to each other in business has improved. So everyone's in the same boat, or has been in the same boat. Everyone's had the sort of stress and pain and struggle of that, and recognizing that on a bit more of a human level rather than cold business. So when I'm in my serviced accommodation business, when I've been communicating with people there, it's built stronger relationships there with the regular clients, because everyone's in the same boat and they're recognizing that you're having your struggles, so then they're being reasonable with you. You'll be being fair to them too. So I think perhaps it's strengthened some of those relationships.
Brilliant. So okay, now back to the now. Now you've got a couple of really exciting projects on your plate right now. Let's talk about the first one, which is a Hampshire-based development in a great market town.
Yeah, so this has been going on quite a long time. So it was on the market last year, and there's been some challenges during the conveyancing, which we are resolving at the moment. But yes, it's going to be it's a free. I'm buying the freehold building with retail on the bottom. There's offices above, and they will be 4 apartments, 4 2-bedroom apartments. So it depends how the market goes as to whether they are something that I hold on to or whether I sell. But what I'll be doing is working closely with the local estate agents to see how they're feeling the market's going. And I know sometimes the local agents can be enthusiastic, and obviously it's been very buoyant at the moment. But it's sort of keeping in touch with them and seeing how they're feeling the market's going as the months go on, really. And I've been working with my project manager to almost reverse engineer when do we want these complete and on the market if they're going to get sold, and reverse engineer that back to how our sort of key milestones on when we want other things to be achieved, to make sure that we get the end goal, so that we get the timing going into the market correct.
Now that sounds great. And without giving too much away, this great market town, it's got some top brand names in the high street, which is great. That tells you it's a buoyant market and it's a growth market, and they're expecting it to sustain itself in the long term. And you've got multiple exits with this particular development. So for example, it would work really nicely for staycations. Equally, it would work for long-term lets because of the proximity to a local transport.
Yeah, yeah. There's a railway very close by. It's about an hour into London, or look at it the other way, it's an hour out of London to come and have a nice day somewhere.
And I know
yeah,
you're offering those
options as we go along.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And I know as well, I was going to say, I know you've potentially for qualified interested parties, there might be an opportunity to work with you on either this project or other projects. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's I'm looking at all the finance options at the moment, and of course there's the most obvious lending from a bank options. I'm looking at the pension investor options as well, whether that's for funding it entirely or loans towards the value of the purchase and the development. So there's a number of people who have shown interest and want to be involved on a loan basis, but it's always worthwhile talking to other people to find out if it's something that they want to get involved with, whether that means that they want to get involved as an armchair investor, if you like, so just want to know that they're getting a great return for their money, or whether it means that they want that plus they also want to be on your shoulder, if you like, watching and learning and seeing how it goes so that they can do their own in the future. That's something that I'm more than happy to have people involved with if they want to learn and see start to finish on how this works, all the ups and downs of it, because I'm sure there will be.
So anyone listening in, if you haven't done this before, as Sam said, it's not fun the first time you do it, but Sam has learned so much and has great knowledge and experience now. So for the right person that's qualified, and once all compliances have been met, there is a learn while you earn type opportunity available.
Yeah.
And Sam will tell you more about how to get in contact with her if that floats your boat later on, because of course she's got a pipeline of other opportunities behind that. So you could register an interest now, and then at the appropriate time, Sam will reach out to you.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
So then, Sam, you've got another opportunity as well as this one, which came to you off market, again in Hampshire, again with probably 3 exits to it. So do you want to share a bit about that one?
Yes, that's a direct to vendor. It's another retail mixed use building. It's got existing residential above and a trading company, a trading business in the retail space too. So it's got the opportunity there to be earning money from day one, which is great and is a comfort and security. The businesses are sustainable, albeit they may have had a period of closed down during Corona. They're back open now, which was very important to me to proceed with the conveyancing, is that both of these businesses and these 2 premises have come back to work and are open and trading. So this one probably just needs a bit of a minor refurbishment in the residential space above, and then it'll be fine. So whether that's keeping it as buy to let, using it as serviced accommodation, I mean, it's in a great location again, close to amenities, transport links, universities, hospitals, that sort of thing. Or whether it's space that needs to be developed back into the commercial. So it's one that I want to hold on to rather than sell. But like you say, there's lots of options. I think it's important that you do have a number of options, not just the one as your exit plan there.
No, that is really great. What I was going to say to you is, what does a typical day look like? You've got so much going on, so many different businesses. So what does a typical day look like for you?
I usually in the morning, first thing is dealing with any serviced accommodation inquiries, whether that's phone, email, that sort of thing, because that's a bit more of a needing an immediate response kind of business. You can't put that down for 2 days and go, oh, I'll deal with that later, because they might need to be doing something today, whether that's speaking to the housekeeping team, the maintenance team, because they're very good and proactive, sorting out payments, sorting out future bookings, marketing, promotions, that sort of stuff. So getting all of that, the bulk of that urgent stuff done in the morning, and then managing any phone calls to do with the developments and moving that on, and trying to make sure that any of those goals for that week to do with the developments are achieved and moving along so that nothing's left stagnant.
Now that sounds great. Now, I continually hear people talking about secrets on how to start a business, secrets on how to be successful in development. But the thing is, there aren't no secrets. It's about having the right knowledge and having the right team around you. With your current knowledge, what would be your advice to somebody wanting to start out today in property and or in development?
To not jump into things too keenly with people you don't necessarily know very well. So I've had some good and bad relationships with working with people. Luckily, the relationships I've had with Sarah have been good ones and they've worked out well. But there's been others where they haven't worked out so well. So people haven't had values that are aligned with mine and are not necessarily prepared to roll their sleeves up and deal with the problems with me, and sometimes have run away from the problems and left me holding the baby, if you like. So I think don't rush into those relationships. I think you need to spend a bit of time finding out what that person's like, otherwise you could have the risk of being burnt.
No, that's a great piece of advice. And on that knowledge, and on that thread even, what would you say was the best piece of advice somebody's ever given you that really helped elevate you in business?
It's advice I have to keep on referring back to because I'm not very good at taking it. And it's about believing in yourself and not losing the faith that you can do it. Sometimes I have a lack of belief in my ability. And yeah, I'm not very good at is recognizing the achievements and celebrating the achievements. I'm terrible for working towards the goal, dealing with the goal, and then going, right, what's next? What's next? Without sort of recognizing you've done something really good and successful, and just keep moving on to the next thing. And if you do that, you're just trudging along this path and it's not a journey that's enjoyable. So it's still a big work in progress for me to do that.
Yeah. But I'm glad to hear you've recognized it, because as you said, it's so important that you celebrate your wins and actually you share with others what you've achieved for reciprocity, etc., that may well come. And also to help them, if they're feeling bad, know it is achievable by keep pushing through and dealing with challenges.
I'm terrible at letting people know what I do. So what we're doing now is not particularly comfortable.
I know, that's why
you see a lot of people who blow their own trumpet on Facebook, and I'm hopeless at doing that. And sometimes people, they say, well, I don't really know what you do, because I don't put it out there all the time on Facebook what I'm doing, and just get on with it. So maybe that's a little bit of a work in progress there. Not that I want to go the other way and be blowing my trumpet all the time, but maybe I need to let people know a little bit more about what I do and why.
Exactly, because there's a lot of people you can help.
Yeah.
So totally. Now, do you have a favourite tool or resource that absolutely you love in your business and it's referred to regularly and you couldn't live without it?
Yes, my phone. I can do all of my work on my phone if I wanted to. It's vital with the SA business that I have, you know, that connection so that I can be anywhere. I mean, I've been on holiday and managed the SA business from abroad, and people don't know I'm abroad. So yeah, that's vital. And there's a lot of working parts to that business, but probably, you know, it sounds a bit basic, but I use Dropbox a lot for that, for sharing with other people. And that's just my vault really, to put everything in there. So it's not on an actual piece of hardware, it's just cloud-based. But yeah, I think our businesses, we can more or less manage from a laptop, can't we? Which does mean that we can be anywhere. I think we can be anywhere more in development than you can serviced accommodation, because sometimes in serviced accommodation you can't rely on your team for everything. Sometimes as the leader, you have to be the person stepping in and dealing with stuff. You can't expect everyone to do all of the tasks for you all of the time. It's not hands-free.
Brilliant. I've got one more question for you before I hand over to Sarah. So if who would you say is the most important member of your team, somebody that you couldn't live without?
If I put that to my development business, it's got to be my non-executive advisor. Because he's got 40 years in the business, and he's probably encountered every obstacle and dealt with it. So he's always got an idea of a solution, and he's a creative thinker. So we'll sort of broaden those ideas and draw those out of me to find those solutions. So I think he's kind of like the safety net, which is great to have that safety net, because when you're dealing with development, you know, we're not dealing with low numbers here. We're dealing with hundreds of thousands of pounds. You know, one of the developments is, you know, got the potential to cost in purchase and development and professional fees, you know, £900,000. I need to know that that's going to be successful and that's going to work. And so working with people who are very experienced in their industry, be that my project manager who's 25 years in the business, the architects probably 30 years, the non-executive advisor 40 years, all those people that I'm using in that development have got decades of experience. I'm never going to get that experience. I haven't got the years ahead to achieve that, and I can't know everything about everything. So long as I've got the right, strong, experienced team, then it'll work.
Brilliant, great answer as well. So Sarah, have you got some questions for Sam?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, like Sam said, we've worked together in quite a few different capacities, so I know Sam very well. You talk quite a lot about your kids, and obviously they're predominantly your why, your reason for doing everything you're doing. Would you say there's any values or habits or anything you're trying to instill in your children now that you thought you would have really helped you when you were younger, and sort of to bring them into your world?
I try and instill on them hard work ethic. So you do need to put the effort in to get the results. And I'm seeing that in them, that they do recognise that. Sometimes it's a bit of a work in progress with one of them. But yeah, I think if you want, and what is really important to me is that they believe that anything they want to do is possible, because somebody else has done it already. So if that person's done it already, why can't they do it? There's no reason why they can't do it, because it's already been proven to be able to happen. So to do that, so to work hard and believe you can achieve anything. Those are the sort of most important things to me, really, for them.
And obviously, I'm cooking a baby. Do you think there's anything that you taught your kids early on? When's too early to start learning or teaching them the values that you want them to have?
I think before they're 5, it's just them being with you and managing as much time as you can with them. And what I didn't have necessarily when I was policing was, you know, so much time with them. There was times when I had to be at work. I ended up being late home from work and all of those sort of things that, you know, many parents say they wish they'd had more time with their kids. I think you've set up your business well, that enables you to be there more, which is fantastic. And just, I think they soak up by watching you anyway.
Yeah.
So whatever you're doing, and involve them in it, they'll see what's happening there. They'll see how you behave in work and business and your work ethics and how you structure your life, and absorb that anyway. They're like little sponges.
And your life in the police force, I think, has really helped you in some ways in the property world, because, you know, dealing with tenants, it's not a walk in the park sometimes, and sometimes you need to be strong. And you've definitely dealt with some of our rogue tenants extremely well. Is there anything else you think the police force has helped you with in the property world?
I think what comes across, hopefully, with me, is that I'm prepared to roll my sleeves up and do anything. It's important to me that there's fairness in business, and that I have strong integrity and values and honesty, and that I can listen to the other side of the story. So I think that's where my interviewing skills come in now, is that I can understand. And it's important to me that if somebody is an investor, for example, you know, this could be their nest egg. So it's very precious what they're investing in me. And that has to be acknowledged by me and respected, that that's very important, and they have to have it back safely. And why do they want to invest it with me? What's important, and how can I achieve that for them at the same time as meeting my goals? So it's not just about me grabbing some investment money and doing what works for me with it. It's important that it works for them too. And I recognise, you know, when they need it back, why they need it back then, what's their return on investment, and why. It's not necessarily always about the interest rate, it's about the other things as well. I think those listening skills come in handy.
Well, definitely, and I think that's why you're one of, you've raised an awful lot of investor finance, probably the most of people in my close network anyway. So that's obviously testament to those skills, but also to your integrity and your values, because you've always paid investors back. No matter what's happened to the project, we'll have hiccups along the way, and lots of people just close down those limited companies when things don't go right, and that's not something you've done, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the pain of things go wrong, and that means the financial pain to me, but the right thing to do is to pay the investors back, because they you know, they put their trust in you, so you've got to do the right thing. And it might take you years to recover from that, but you have to do the right thing.
Yeah, and it's particularly a pertinent topic at the moment. There's a lot of people talking about property sharks and things like that at the moment.
Yeah.
And I know we've all had dealings with people who were less than fair, or you know, had integrity which wasn't perhaps to what we would like to work with. Do you have any advice for people as to sort of knowing when those sharks are in front of them and trying to avoid them?
I think it's a bit like the joint venture thing. You know, find out a little bit more about people, and take your time and speak to other people who have dealt with them. What's their experience like, and do a bit of digging on them.
Yeah.
whether that's company's house, whether that's going through their entire Facebook profile, their LinkedIn, who do they know? Is there anyone in their friends list that you know is a red flag to you, and you're thinking, well, if you associate with them, you know, is that a bit of a worry, that sort of thing. And don't be afraid of asking direct questions. So even if you're thinking, oh, I don't really want to ask them that question because it sounds a bit provocative and a bit challenging, if it's an important question to you, you need to get it asked.
Yeah, I think people are too scared to ask for, you know, proof of what people have compared to what they say they have. But, you know, if someone's got nothing to hide, it won't be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't like it when people elaborate on their asset wealth, or I've done, you know, X amount of properties, I own X amount of properties, I'm worth this sort of thing. And, you know, half the time they're an investor in that project. They're not controlling the project. They're an investor. They put X amount in it, or they've got partnerships where they're a quarter owner of property and count that as a whole. And
yeah,
you think, well, you're only going to get found out later, so why don't you just be honest in the first place? You know, people would rather you said, this is what I've done so far, this is what I'm planning to do, than they find out later that you made a load of stuff up.
Yeah, I think we all know people like that in our communities, and it is essential that you do your DD on anyone you work with. Apologies if you guys can hear there's some loud banging going on outside. Yeah, no, thank you, that's really helpful. Okay, so finally, I always ask people this, if you had £100,000, you started again tomorrow with the same knowledge you've got and £100,000, what would you do with that £100,000?
I'd put it in, I'd use it for development. In our area, you can't get, you could perhaps put 50 into 50 each into 2 projects, but we don't get much for our money these days, do we, in the south? So try and perhaps split that into 2 developments projects in the south, or one that's something where I can add value. So whether that's something like the 2 flats that we did on the Isle of Wight, you know, that didn't really cost us that much, did it? What was it, 150 or something to do that? So that would have been a great return there. Or something where you're putting 50 in, but you're buying something for 200.
Yeah, so you 50 as a deposit.
Yeah, and whether that's a residential that you can do permitted development rights to do extensions, or whether that means into a commercial building that you can do that. I'm always going to favour permitted development rights rather than planning, because you have better control with the permitted development rights than you do with the planning application. And look at those sort of opportunities, and look at things where you can try and be creative and not everyone else will spot what you can do with it. So the less obvious developments. But I guess that comes with practice of appraising lots and lots of different properties to see what you can do with it before you can have a bit more of a creative eye on something.
Yeah, I think that definitely comes with experience, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, thanks, Sam.
You're welcome.
So Sam, that has been brilliant. So if people want to keep up with you, keep in contact with you, or actually reach out and ask you some questions, I know they can contact you through our Property Angels page at Property Angels UK on Facebook, but how else can they contact you?
So they could get hold of me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, or my Facebook page, just Sam Beddoe. My company is Revive Holdings. I have a website, so you can just look up Revive Holdings. All my contact details are there. There's a contact page on there as well. And although I don't particularly enjoy them, I will do some lives on the properties when we get hold of them and we start the build. I'll do some Facebook lives there, because I know people like seeing around, you know, tired old buildings and bringing them to life. So I think that will be a great thing to do. I will make myself do it out of my comfort zone.
And we can run a series on that on our Property Angels page anyhow, so people can see how the project moves along and the transformation. That'll be brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it.
Thank you, Sam. It's been absolutely fantastic today. And yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah. Thanks for the interview. Right.
Bye, everyone. And we'll see you at 9 o'clock next week. Bye for now.